What's up, guys? It's your buddy Tyler coming at you with a brand new video here on my Retro Life podcast. And it is Christmas time, so we thought it would be perfect to maybe discuss one of the greatest years in gaming for Christmas, which happened to be 30 years ago. 1994 was 30 years ago.
Early Christmas morning at our home. Did Santa Claus come?
I have tons of memories of the games that I got that year, and a lot of people watching know about it. I want to know more about what you guys experienced. So why don't we start with Brian, because I actually remember some of the games that you got because, we live right down the street. Well, actually, at this time, we didn't live down the street from each other anymore.
Yeah.
I had moved at this point, but we were constantly at each other's homes. What were the games? Refresh me of the games you got that year, and, maybe some of the standout titles.
I'll take you through it. So a big one for us was Secret of Mana. I learned about it through a friend, and I don't think it even came out in 94, or maybe it did. And we played it so much. My copy's right there on the table, and you could tell it's got some wear and tear. But we had to have it that year. So that was a big one on my list.
Could you pass that to me, Brian?
And
this is your original?
That's the original.
Oh my gosh, guys.
Replace the battery in it.
Brian would bring this over before I ever played it, and he would bring this copy over to my house when he'd spend the night, sleepovers, and oh my gosh, we would play this so late into the evening. It was crazy, and this is where I fell in love with the game. Was your copy?
Yeah, so we got that for Christmas, and we had always heard that it's 3-player compatible if you have the multi-tap. So we got the multi-tap. It wasn't the L-shaped Bomberman multi-tap. It was like the D-shaped one. It was an off-brand one, but it worked anyways. Mm-hmm. And me and my brothers, we played it. I played it with you and Rashid.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of memories with that one. And 3 players back then was a huge deal. That was before you had a console with 4 controller ports. And it was amazing.
Yeah, I remember going over to your house and playing with the 3-player tap. And you had to, in this game, Secret of Mana, you had to get to a certain point in the game where you had unlocked all the characters in the storyline that you could even get to that point of playing multiplayer. And so that in itself was kind of a feat. So once you got there, you felt real good about it, and it's like you unlocked the ability to play with your friends on the game. Yeah. So it was like very important to get to that point in the game. Love Secret of Mana. I got it that year too.
You finally got it, huh? And guess who got it for you? Not me.
I know. It was showing Uncle Mike and Minnie and Mikey in New York.
That's right.
Aaron, what have you got for us? Another RPG?
Of course. It's got to be Final Fantasy in the States, 3, but what we know it is Final Fantasy 6. Came out that year, and I didn't have a Super Nintendo at the time, but my buddies did. And what I would do is I would find excuses to go over to their house to play it. So we would go. They usually played racing games, Donkey Kong Country, adventure games, but there was something about this box that they got for a gift around Christmas time. They got it. We went over. I knew about Final Fantasy, and I was like, I'm going to stay here all day. And so we sat in front of the TV and just played that game. And it was nothing like they had ever experienced or that I had ever experienced. And I specifically remember probably the scene that everyone remembers from that game, the opera scene, and never experiencing anything like that in a video game up until that time. So we sat there and we were like, what is going on? What is this experience? And it was a very special Christmas because we got to experience that together as a bunch of friends for the first time.
Wow, that's really cool. What about it do you think, like when you still play it, when you go back to it these days, does it make you remember that Christmas?
It does.
It falls right back in place.
Yeah, what I remember about the game is a sense of exploration and about things that weren't necessarily clear, but that you were trying to figure out as the player. And it was nothing like I'd experienced up until that point. I remember going around like we do when we play video games and clicking on random statues or going in corners and maybe there's an item here. But in this game, you could actually get rewarded for that. Because I remember going to a statue and all of a sudden there was a random boss encounter where this statue kind of came to life. A lot of you watching probably remember that.
Wow. Yeah, I never played Final Fantasy. It's still to this day one of those bucket list like games. I know I got to play that. I got to play a Chrono Trigger. Some standout RPGs. Of course, those of you watching know why I didn't really play a whole lot of RPGs growing up. We won't get into that, but I love hearing about it from you guys.
Okay, kid, show me what you got. Yeah, right. Next! Next! Next!
Final Fantasy III. Do you have what it takes? Final Fantasy III from Squaresoft.
So Sean, what do you got? What do you got? Christmas 94.
Christmas 94.
What was the game you were playing?
So,
what was the game under the tree?
Well, so in 93, I got Street Fighter 2 for the Sega Genesis, the Champion Edition. And I was obsessed with it. It was my favorite game that entire year. And then I remember we went into a local arcade in our neighborhood called Squeeze Play. And I saw Super Street Fighter 2. And I was like, what is this? I never even heard of it. It was just a complete surprise to me. And, I saw the intro with, Ryu, kind of facing the camera, building up to his Hadouken. And I was like, oh man, this is so cool. And then I saw it was like, they have 4 new characters, new stages, new music in those stages. I was like, oh man, what is this? So I figured they were going to be bringing it to the Genesis that year. So I couldn't stand the fact that there was like a better version of this game that I held so dearly. I needed to have it in my home.
So you wanted the 3DO version.
Yeah. And Christmas Eve, night, I'm like laying in bed and I was so excited I couldn't even go to sleep. Sure enough, I went out there super excited, saw it right there, and I played it, enjoyed it. Still one of my favorite fighting games.
Yo, win. Is that what they said?
Yeah, you win.
Did you win?
Yep.
Another winner, huh?
That's really cool, man. So did that become the game of Christmas for you?
Yeah,
Like,
that
you
was
and Brian
that
playing
one
like
was definitely the one for Christmas. Yeah,
I can
That's
imagine,
Christmas
being
94.
Street Fighter, it's like multiplayer.
Yeah, and it was really, I was fortunate to grow up with a twin. So, we would always play the fighting games. It was just always about fighting games, competing with each other, and then bringing over friends. And, that was the appeal back then for sure.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to share another Christmas 94 gaming memory that maybe I haven't shared on this channel, or really a game I just want to highlight from that year, and it's on the table right here. Actually, Sean, if you don't mind handing Contra to me. Yeah, man. So I opened.
I did see that you got that one on that video.
Yeah, so it's in the video. If you go back, I'll put up the thumbnail right here. This is what it looks like. If you guys want to go check out that episode, definitely do. It'll give you a further backstory on this entire discussion, really. But Contra Hardcore became one of the top games of that year, and really just it's so difficult. That's the one thing, and I've talked about it in the top 10 hardest games of all time. It's on my top 10. I think it was like number 2 or something like that. But it didn't stop me from continuing to punish myself time and time again trying to beat this game, because oh my gosh, it's just such a beautiful game. It's really the best looking Contra game possibly ever. Yeah, it's debatable, but it just looks fabulous. And really, Gunstar Heroes, that whole team of people at Treasure left this game from Konami, and they went and formed Treasure, and that's how we got Gunstar Heroes. Now, this game is on the table right now because Brian, I know you have something you want to share about good old Gunstar Heroes and Christmas '94.
Yeah, I got this Christmas '94. I know it came out in '93, but back then, you didn't know when these games came out. It wasn't as you didn't have the internet, right? So you got what you got, and you put me on this one that summer. Amazing game, probably the best shooter on the Genesis. I mean, rival Hardcore.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's just action-packed. I mean, there's nothing as fast-paced as this game. It's just, and it's beautiful to play 2-player. You got to play it 2-player. get it with your best friend and just knock it out. And hey, it came with a fruit roll-up too, so can't beat that. Right?
That's a known fact that is actually not talked about enough, I think, is the fruit roll-up.
I didn't know anything about this.
It
What
was
was
crazy. So, like, you opened it up. I remember driving home with it because I didn't get it for Christmas. My cousin Manny got it for Christmas. That's where I first played it. But I remember driving home and opening it up on the car ride home, and there was a fruit roll-up inside. It was this promotional tie-in. And it's funny how that's one of the things that stands out the most about Gunstar Heroes to me, other than how incredible the game is. But yeah, that's so funny.
It surprises me that more Genesis games didn't put little goodies in their box like that. Because
Yeah.
I mean, there's room in there, you know.
Yeah.
Like put it.
I think Toe Jam and Earl 2 was another one that had that, if I remember correctly. It's funny if there's a group, maybe a subset of collectors out there, Sega Genesis collectors, are trying to find the frozen fossilized, or not frozen, but fossilized fruit by the foot. Maybe they're collecting those particular ones.
Or do they consider it CIB if they don't have the fruit roll-up? Like
Yeah.
the original fruit roll-up?
Right. It's got to have the original.
Uneaten,
You can't just go to the store and buy one and throw it in there. Sonic and Knuckles, I think by far, I think it's the one that really I remember on Christmas 94. Out of all those games I got for Christmas 94, Sonic and Knuckles, it was right there up front as a Santa Claus gift from my family. Like, and the Santa Claus gifts were like always the heavy hitters and stuff that was supposed to be. But Sonic and Knuckles, I had played it earlier that year at Disney World at Sega's Innoventions display at Epcot. They had Sonic and Knuckles on one of the kiosks, and I actually have footage of me playing it that we'll show right now, and it's crazy how hyped I was for this game, because in my mind, and I think a lot of our minds, it was Sonic the Hedgehog 4. It was like the closest thing that we're going to get to it. We knew, we'd read maybe in magazines and stuff that it was going to be, more of it was just the continuation.
It's like a part two, Sonic 3 part 2.
Yeah, it could have been called that even. Yeah. But the marketing was great because they didn't do that. So it left us to think, oh, it's Sonic the Hedgehog 4, basically. Yeah. So the lock-on technology was so cool, where you could just like plug on, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and suddenly that game became extremely long. But you could just play Sonic and Knuckles by itself and start in that first stage, which
Mushroom
Hill. Mushroom Hill Zone. Yeah. And man, that's oftentimes how I played the game. Was just I treated it like Sonic the Hedgehog 4.
I treated it that way too. I would lock on, the Sonic 2 or 3 or 1 even, and go back and play those. But usually I just wanted to play Sonic and Knuckles, and Flying Battery Zone was my favorite stage in that game. Super cool music, and the whole, it was just off the wall, like straight up. Like the game, that stage was really cool and fun. I remember I played it at Target first, like maybe a few months earlier, and then I remember seeing that that emblem that they had with like Sonic and Knuckles, like so cool.
It's
the
so
artwork
iconic.
It is. I remember thinking that was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen, and then I remember it being on the box, and it's just like really cool. I have a lot of good memories with Sonic and Knuckles.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it would be funny if we did have it here in the Tower of Power. It would kind of be blocking my view. But
That would be funny.
I think that's the only reason it's not in there.
Yeah.
Sega presents one champion of good, one pawn of evil. It's Sonic and Knuckles. Not only is it the greatest Sonic game ever, it also comes with lock-on technology. Plug in Sonic 2 and use Knuckles to play in a whole new way. Plug in Sonic 3 for 34 megs of power, new worlds, and surprise endings. Sonic and Knuckles with lock-on technology, only on Sega Genesis. Sonic and Knuckles, other game cartridges, and Sega Genesis, each sold separately.
I would say I would take your Sonic and Knuckles and raise you Donkey Kong Country, which is another huge release of '94.
So it's like, it's hard to even, for me, because I got Donkey Kong Country also, and it's hard for me to even decide between the two. My reaction says Donkey Kong Country was the winner. My gosh, I had played Donkey Kong Country prior to that Christmas because my cousins from Michigan had come in a little bit earlier, and they brought with them Donkey Kong Country. That was the first time I got to play the game, but I got a really good dose of Donkey Kong Country from them, and they were my younger, smaller cousins. They were younger than me, and they weren't appreciating the genius that was this game. I could tell. Like, they got it, and it was just like, oh, okay, like, here's this game we got. And I'm just like salivating over this incredible Super Nintendo game. man, if I think back to like, it's always music. It's the music. It's the
graphical style too.
Yeah,
It's
it was
amazing
fresh.
looking
It was
game.
new.
Yeah.
Man, it just, I play that game and I'm immediately back in Christmas 1994. Especially like hearing aquatic ambiance, that music, it literally washes over you.
That was the only game competing for Final Fantasy VI during that Christmas was Donkey Kong Country. It's a very special game.
Did you get it that year?
We played it, same friends. Went to their
Okay.
house, we would play Final Fantasy VI and Donkey Kong Country. Those were the two.
What is it about Donkey Kong Country? There's so many people I feel like in our age group, like that game is a special one.
Yeah,
it's a strong graphical enhancement. It's got attitude. It's got that Super Nintendo attitude. You know, even just the intro where Donkey Kong comes in with his boombox and knocks Cranky off the stage. Like it's just got that attitude. It's got the visuals. It's got the massive, amazing soundtrack.
The controls are amazing,
immaculate. Like I mean, I love Donkey Kong Country, but that whole DKC 2 is actually my favorite platformer of all time. Like in you know, much to thank DKC 1, the controls are amazing. Like pinpoint.
Yeah, my brother's wife, she moved here from Ecuador, and she was, Donkey Kong Country'd out. She was like, it's like one of her favorite games of all time. So all around the world, this was like a huge hit.
You know what's funny is I actually beat this game recently, a couple months ago, and I forgot about the ending. And I put my controller down. For those of you who haven't beaten it, there's a surprise at the end.
That's right. What was the surprise, actually? Spoiler alert.
He gets back up.
That's right. K. Rool. I forgot about that. Yeah, he gets back up.
And he clobbered me. Yeah, because I was excited. To beat
that
the
was
game.
such a funny meta kind of joke back then, and it really did. I remember catching me off guard too. I remember thinking I beat the game, like all right, and then all of a sudden he gets back up. I think the same thing happened to me. I think he killed me.
It's got to get everybody the first time.
Everybody.
You see the credits and you put your controller down. It's like,
man, that was genius. This game was genius, and this game, along with all the others we've talked about here, we haven't talked about even all of the games that came out that year. It was just, I think, for me personally, obviously because of just the magnitude of that, the insanity of that Christmas, getting so many of these games, it's definitely my favorite retro Christmas. It definitely is. But I think it can honestly be put in contention as just as far as gaming in general, not just me personally. I think it's just such a bona fide year for video games. So many standout titles came out, and we've talked a lot about a lot of them here on the show today.
Yes! Don't scream. What is it? Final Fantasy III. From who, Santa?
If you guys have any memories of Christmas 1994, some games we missed, definitely let us know in the comments below. I really want to hear some of your suggestions or hear some of your stories. Man, there's so much we could talk about. Go on and on.
I feel like we could talk about this topic for 3 days at least.
Yeah, well, I specifically wanted to do this one because it's 30 years later.
Yeah.
Like, that just blows my mind. I mean, these games, look at this. This stuff's 30 years old. We're getting old, guys.
Yeah,
We're getting old, but you know what? I think it just makes us appreciate it more.
Yeah, life's good.
Yeah. And you know what? We can introduce these games to our kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they could get clobbered at the end as well.
Don't spoil it for them.
We should film that.
Yes,
I'm going to film that with
yes.
Hallie. Get her to the end of Donkey Kong. I hope she's not watching.
She's going to watch
I'm going to make sure she doesn't watch this episode.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that's so cool. Thank you guys for being here. And hey, Merry Christmas. We'll catch you next time.
The Lion King.
The Lion King?